Hi guys, so it's 3 o'clock, so just going to wait for a few people to come on board and then we'll get cracking on with the presentation. If you've got questions, please go through and enter them through the Q&A panel or the chat panel, and I'll review them towards the end of the presentation and answer as many as I can. And hopefully we'll answer a lot of the questions that were that's come from the announcement yesterday evening regarding help for the self-employed. And then the idea, hopefully towards the end of the presentation, answer as many questions as I can. If I can't, or I don't know the answers, then we'll be sending out an email on Monday with the full Q&A and also our answers. So look out for that. Just to also to let you know, we're trying to keep you guys informed as much as possible, and we are running webinars every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 3 o'clock, so we can just keep you up to date, because things are changing at a rapid pace, virtually an hourly basis rather than an daily basis. So yeah, let me just see, someone's just put something on the chat to see if there's something important. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Do I need to mute, or I'm already muted? So I can't, yeah, so everybody, I've muted everybody, so you can't hear me, which is fine. So the idea is just put it through the chat and the Q&A, and I'll deal with any questions, so I can't hear anybody. Just before I start, someone has put something in the Q&A already, so let me have a look if there's anything in there. Okay, fine. So let's get on with the presentation, and I'll deal with stuff as we go through. So the overview. So from yesterday, I'd imagine most of you will know all the detail regarding what was announced. So they're going to help with the self-employed people, giving them a taxable grant, which is really important. The taxable grant is worth 80% of their average monthly trading profits over the last 3 years. We're up to a maximum of £2,500. And the idea is that this is in line with the employed rebate that was announced. Seems like a long time ago. I think it was even last week. So that's helping the self-employed. It will apply to those people who have filed a 2018-19 tax return, and late filers will have another 4 weeks to file. So if you haven't submitted your 18-19 return for any reason, then you should obviously get this done as soon as possible. Unfortunately, this will not apply to anyone who has started self-employment after the 5th of April 19. So virtually a year ago, if you started your self-employed business, you will not be entitled to this grant. And again, if your average profit over the 3 years is more than £50,000, so if you are fortunate enough to have earned £50,000 and a penny, you will not get any grants whatsoever. So again, they've obviously had to put a limit to where they can actually cut this off, and £50,000 average seems to be the way they've come about it. And there's got to be a majority of your income from self-employment, which I'll talk about later on. Again, no point contacting HMRC, because you're not going to get this grant until the end of June at the earliest. So they're saying that they're going to backdate the payment for 3 months. So you will all get a payment, a lump sum of 3 months payment into your bank account at the end of June, if hopefully the website or the software is up to date and ready to go. How much will you get? So you'll get 80% of your average monthly profits based over the last 3 years, whichever is the lower figure, or 2.5 grand. So a good example here, if your average profits is £13,000, 80% of that is 10,400, divided by 12, you will get £866 times 3, because it's the 3 months, March, April, May, at the end of June. Obviously, if the scheme's extended, then obviously you will get more money as you go along. If the average profits is 45 grand, 80% of that is 36,000, divided by 12 gives you £3,000, which is over the 2.5 grand. So you'll get capped at £2,500. What happens if you haven't been trading for 3 years? They'll average it out across the years that you have been trading. And if you've only just started in the current tax year, you want to get nothing, and you'll have to go down the universal credit route. which from my understanding, they've increased all the limits. However, they still look at the amount of money you've got in your bank account. So I think it is, if you've got more than £16,000 in your bank account, you're not going to get any universal credit. And they've aligned the rates to the statutory sick pay amounts of £94.25 a week. So unfortunately, if you are self-employed, you're going to have to go down that route. When will this be happening? So due to the system, hopefully the end of June, and will be a lump sum. The Chancellor did announce that if you are struggling over the next 3 months, then you need to try and apply for the CBILS scheme, your loan scheme, and good luck with that, because we're hearing the banks are just having a complete nightmare trying to process these, get them done quickly enough, having the resources. And basically some of the banks have just even shut shop and turned around and said, look, we're not doing anything more regarding that. And the criteria to obviously get your loan is very, very strict. So it doesn't really help a lot of clients or businesses with the loans. Job retention scheme. So if you employ anyone, the rules apply where you're furloughing your employees. If you need more information on how that works, if you have employees, then our webinar on Monday at 3 o'clock will go into a lot of detail regarding this, because at the same time as he was doing his announcement yesterday, he gave out the detail regarding this scheme. So now we've got a little bit more clarity of how this will work. Again, go through the universal credit, deferring your HMRC debts, do your payment holidays with your mortgage company, and negotiate with suppliers, which, great, all these things are great to help you, but to be honest, it's not putting any cash in your pocket. And we just have to now sort of work through and make sure that this is your cash flow enables you to work and get to the end of June, which hopefully a lot of you will do. Again, employed workers furloughed during the outbreak, they cannot work, and they mustn't work, otherwise it will jeopardise the ability for you to claim the rebate. However, for self-employed workers, they have actually said that you can still get the grant and continue working, which is very nice of them. So you can continue working if you're lucky enough to be able to work. If you haven't filed your 1819 tax return, please make sure you get it done. You've got 4 weeks from now, 23rd of April, to get your return filed. How long will it last? Again, we've been told it's going to be 3 months from March to May, but they could extend it if they wanted to. Profit limit, yes, we've talked about this. £50,000 is your profit limit, and the very important part is that it's the majority of your income has to be from self-employment. So they did announce that you've got to have more than 50% of your income from self-employment to be able to get the grant. So if you've got a mixed, you've got some rental income, and your rental income is maybe more than your self-employed income, you're not going to get the rebate. So they do say the majority of the income has to be from self-employment. So to carry on from that, if you've got rental income, and if your rental income is your main source of income, so you haven't got any self-employment income, and you are a landlord, a professional landlord with quite a few properties getting rent, unfortunately, this scheme is not meant to help you guys. As we've seen over the last few years, the government really does not like landlords, and this is something else that they're not going to give away to the landlords. So unfortunately, rental income is not self-employed, so you need to look at other ways, other means of financing your income. We're getting questions on this all the time. Directors of companies considered self-employed? Categorically no, you are not considered self-employed. If you are a director of your own limited company, you are a director and you are on the payroll taking salaries and dividends, you are not covered by this scheme. And the idea is that you should furlough yourself if you're not working, which is very important for the furlough scheme. And for you to be entitled to the rebates, you have to not be working. You must stop working. Shouldn't be doing any emails, phone calls, or anything to do with the business. You've got to furlough yourself and say, my business is shut. Then you're entitled to 80% of your salary, not the dividends part. It's just your salary. So if you want a basic salary up to your personal allowance limit of 12.5, you're going to get 80% of that. If you stopped trading ages ago, you won't be covered, unfortunately. You need to currently be trading at the point of application, or would have been if it weren't for the virus. So you need to be seen to be continuing to trade and carrying on once we're out of the other, hopefully the other side of this, and everyone starts getting back to normal. So if you've stopped trading for any reason and you've still got maybe tax returns submitted for those 3 years, it's not going to help. You have to continue to trade and be seen to be trading. Well, I have had a few people ask me, can I go back now and refile my 18-19 return because I'm still within a year of amending my tax return? Definitely not. And if you do, then you're defrauding HMRC. Is down as you'll be treated as being fraud. So definitely would not recommend refiling your 18-19 tax return. Can I do any work? Yes. Unlike the employed workers, you can work. Self-employed guys can continue to work and obviously claim the grant. Is the grant tax-free? No, he made it very clear. This is a taxable grant. This will be taxed as part of your income. So you need to enter this income on your 2021 tax return, and tax will be payable Jan 22 on this amount. So if you'll continue to trade in this tax year, you will pay tax on your profits. You'll pay and tax on the grant, but there's no reason why HMRC will ask for the grant back if, for example, your profits in the current year exceed £50,000. So it's a one-off. It's a grant based on the 3 years average, added to your existing income, and that's it. So there's no rebate or clawback of that grant. So we've taken some guidance from ICAEW, the Institute of Chartered Accountants, and they're updating the members on a daily basis. And they've obviously highlighted the obvious, that the problem here is going to be cash flow. How are people meant to survive over the next 3 months waiting for this grant to come in? Obviously, people can maybe speak to their banks and explain to their banks, maybe with our help and guidance, to say, yes, you're entitled to this rebate. We need some funding overdraft facilities until we get the grant in. But in the meantime, you need to obviously speak to your mortgage companies and make sure that you're getting that mortgage holiday to get through the months of April and May. So that's a very quick tour. There wasn't much else really announced yesterday. I've tried to cover all the main points, trying to deal with some of the questions that people have answered, and hopefully I've answered most of them. So let me just get the chat, because there's quite a few people have put a few questions to me. So bear with me whilst I just read them out, and then hopefully I can answer them. If not, I'll come back to you once I've done a bit of research. So Glenn Miller, I employed through my company a basic salary. Are they helping people receive dividends? Right. So from something I read this morning from somebody quite high up and has contacts with the Chancellor, they've said that they think there will be an announcement today to help directors of their own limited companies. God knows what that's going to be. However, just keep an eye out for that. If there is no announcement, then you've got to make that big decision whether you furlough yourself, can't work, and obviously claim 80% of your £700 or whatever you're paying yourself per month as a salary. So Russell, my wealth is self-employed, earning around £1,000 per month gross. After costs and profits are fairly low. Right, so she also earns dividends from her limited company, 50% shareholder. So the problem there, her dividend income is more than her self-employed income. So she will not get anything through the self-employed rebate, because her self-employment income has to be more than 50% of her other income. She doesn't qualify, unfortunately. Limited companies, again, directors have not been included, correct. This is from Mary Louise Jones. It seems to me to treat average shareholder directors to pay over preceding 3 years as a profit when assessing the health of these companies into the tracks of LLPs that the legal profession use. Okay, not really a question there. Susan, if we had adopted profit first as a way of accounting, might we have been in a better situation soon in this country? I'm suggesting this is a way forward after this mess. I completely agree. Can directors be furloughed? Yes, they can. Once again, you have to be not to be seen to be working. How HMRC are going to enforce this? How are they going to police it? How are they going to check it? I have no idea. Are they going to check your emails whilst this is going on? Are they going to check that you're raising sales invoices? You're making payments in your business? You're trying to run up some business? I don't know. You guys have to make that decision whether you furlough yourself as a director. But if you do, obviously, you shouldn't be working, and make that obviously quite clear. And you don't jeopardize any potential clawback of the rebate when HMRC do start looking into it. How are the government HMR going to play? Yeah, correct. I don't know. The webinar is going to be sent out after this. Once I've finished, the webinar will be sent. So watch out for it on your emails. If I file a 1920 tax return come April 6th, will that cancel the average of 3 years? Definitely not. 100% that will not include your 1920 return into the average 3 years. 1819 return is the last year that we'll take into account. No, they will not take into account your savings like universal credit when applying for the grant. They will be just looking at your profit for the last 3 years, looking to see that you're not exceeding £50,000. If you're not, then you will get the grant up to the cap of £2,500. Claire, registered self-employed this year, is there any help for you? None whatsoever. Very clear. Registered now in this tax year, you will not be entitled to this grant. You've got to then look at other ways of getting your funding. Barry, thank you very much. That's made me laugh. No, you get sweet FA like the rest of us. Dave, do you know if the government are going to look again into the single director? Yeah, again, it's only something I picked up from somebody who's made that comment. I can't believe they're not going to do something. Just keep an eye out. If there is an announcement, again, I'll include it in my next webinar. Make sure you guys look out for the next ones next week. No, so if you still got payments coming in monthly for the next 2 months, won't affect your eligibility for the grant. So you will still get the grant, even if, like I said in the presentation, even if with the grant and we get out of this and you have good profits this year, they won't reclaim the grant. So it's the grant is based on the last average of the last 3 tax years up to 1819. So that's some of the chat. Let me see if I've got some Q&A. There's some Q&A as well, which would be amazing if I could actually, Q&A. So there we go. I'm not sure if you can actually see this on the screen as well. I think you most probably can. So I don't think I'll be the first to ask what's the score with the limited companies. So I've answered that already. What I might do is take this off the screen. So again, what about if only 2 tax returns filed, then they'll take the average of those 2 tax years. Joint directors don't apply to directors. 2 partners in an LLP. So yes, the cap is £2.5 grand for each of them. So the LLPs, you're treated, that income is treated as self-employment. So you will get the £2.5 grand cap for it both. As long, okay, you get the £2.5 grand cap as long as your individual incomes don't exceed £50,000. Over the £50,000, you get nothing. There's no cap. So just watch that. So 80% of profit. So your profit will be determined by what your tax return shows as submitted to HMRC. So if you're having, if your expenses includes van expenses, other costs that obviously you include, that will all be taken into account. So it's the taxable profits on your tax returns. Yes, you can apply for universal credit if you have been self-employed for the last 3 years and wait for this scheme to come about as well. You should be able to, via universal credit, on the online system, be able to see what you're entitled to through there. unfortunately, if you're not registered, if you're not showing profits on your tax return, then unfortunately you're not going to be able to get anything. And again, directors not getting anything. So how can furlough wages be backdated to the 1st of March? Right, so the furlough, so I've been asked this is nothing really to do with self-employment, but it's quite a good question. So the way the furlough worked is that they backdated to the 1st of March. That was basically to cover anybody who was made redundant from the 1st of March to the 20th of March when it was announced. So the idea was for those companies to go back to those guys that have been made redundant, bring them back on board, say that we're going to re-employ you because now they're on the furlough schemes. That was the idea of backdating it to the 1st of March. If you furloughed somebody from today, then obviously you're only going to get the rebate from today onwards. You obviously cannot go back to the 1st of March. Right, so if your profits for 18-19 were very small, then that's going to obviously be taken into account when you work out your average of your 3 years. If you've had 2 good years and 1 bad year, they will average it, and then you'll have 80% rebate based on that figure. If you have regular income but low profit, it sounds like I won't get much. Correct. It's all based on profit. So you could have a big income, and if you're paying out a lot of expenses or your margins are very, very low, it will only be based on your profit, not income. You've got to be registered as self-employed with HMRC to be able to get the rebate. If you've not registered because maybe you're not earning enough or you think it's covered by your personal allowance, unfortunately you're not going to get anything because HMRC will obviously check it against their records. Temp agency self-employed worker who finished a contract last week, so wasn't working, but can now find work due to the lack of it. So wasn't working, but can now find work. So if the temp agency self-employed worker, a lot of that depends whether they're on the payroll. If they're on the payroll of that agency, then they're under all the PAYE rules, which is all to do with furlough. If they're just temping as self-employed, then obviously they're under this scheme. So Lucy says, if I earned under £50,000 for 2 years, but last year was over 50, how does that work? You've got to average your 3 years. So basically you work out your average for 3 years, per the example in the presentation. If your average over 3 years puts you over £50,000, you get nothing. So do the calculations and see if you're close to that limit. Another question I received: mix of director salary, self-employment and a small rent. Self-employment has stopped entirely. Can I claim on account of self-employment? Again, you've got to look at your average of your 3 years and look at whether your self-employment income is more than 50%. If it is, then yeah, you'll be fine. If not, if your self-employment is a very small part of your income, you're not going to be able to get any of the rebate. Can you claim the 80% if you're on a pension? No, you can't. That's not classed as self-employed income. You've got to be self-employed and registered with HMRC as self-employed. Is this done on gross or net profit? Correct, it's on net profit. What is the definition of working and the criteria for a furlough director? We don't know. We've been asked this loads of times. If you read the definition of furlough for an employee, basically they are not working. I think it was meant to cover for the restaurant, the hospitality trade, the retail, where shops have shut completely. They're obviously not able to work. I don't think they really thought it through properly for directors or guys that are trying to, salesmen are trying to drum up a bit of business for when we get out of this. So we don't know. I don't know what the definition of working is for a furlough director. I think we should get some announcements regarding directors shortly. However, if you've shut your business, closed the business down, I think as long as you're not sending out huge amounts of emails, sending loads of invoices out, if you're lucky enough to do that, I think you should be okay to claim the rebate. So Linda, thank you. Lee, confirm this grant is for an individual, so for partners based on each partner's share of profit on her self-assessment tax return. Correct. Also, if self-employment earnings are greater than 50% in total, looking at the 3 years tax return, but say employment income is more than self-employment in the year, is that okay? I think the way to look at that would be, you've got to look at your average. From reading the guide, you've got to take your average of your 3 years profits and look at your income from each source for the 3 years and see if then you can split it down, and you can then see if your self-employed income is more than 50%, then you're not going to be entitled to anything. So that's the way I would do the calculation. Hope that helps. Another question on directors, can they be furloughed? You can furlough individuals and keep others on, so there's no issue with that. From an employment law perspective, I have no idea where you stand, how you can pick and choose who you want to furlough over other employees. I have seen some of the guidance saying that you've got to make that decision based on skills and aptitude and working relationships and things like that. However, when this all settles down, I can see the employment lawyers having a field day looking at people's furlough agreements. What I have seen for some HR people, some HR advisors, is to get the employee to sign a letter to confirm that they agree with all the terms and they've agreed to be furloughed. I think that's a good way to go and good advice, that if that employee has signed that, then I think you're pretty much covered. Just going through some more questions. Hope that's okay with everybody and I haven't lost too many people. For my accounts last year, I had 2 big invoices that I'd sent in 18-19 and client late paying, so they paid after Jan 31 cut-off. Can I include them in my self-assessment for 18-19? That's a great question. So most self-employed accounts are done on an invoice basis, not on a cash basis. So hopefully your accounts that you submitted for 18-19 were done on that basis. So I would imagine your invoices would be included in your 18-19 tax return, and your profit would be showing that income. You need to speak to your accountant to see if your profit and loss and your profit with your accounts were submitted on a invoice or a cash basis, because you can under certain limits do your accounts on a cash basis, but I'd imagine it's done on an invoice basis, so you should be okay. Great one, Hannah. Will Boris still get paid? Definitely. I've heard that he's not being furloughed, and I've heard he's being paid 100%. That's a great question. If I'm over the 50 grand limit, you are truly, you're not going to get anything. And obviously, company directors, we just got to wait to see what happens. How do we apply for the grants? Would the account apply for it? Would the accountant apply for it? I'd imagine that means, would the accountant apply for it? So I would imagine once the software has been built and up and running, from what I hear, you just enter your obviously details, and HMRC will do the necessary checks and obviously pay the amount into your bank account. The next question I was expecting is how quickly they're going to pay it, how quickly they're going to make the checks. I have no idea whether they're going to pay within 7 days or the end of the month. We shall wait and see. I'm a partner in a limited liability company. I'd imagine that's what that means. So as long as you're self-employed on your tax return, you will get the rebate. So if I'm right, then if you're on an agency under the umbrella companies, your class is PAYE 100%. Yeah, if you're getting a pay slip, you're paying tax and national insurance through the umbrella company because you're on their payroll, you are classed as an employee. You will then be under the furlough scheme, need to speak to whoever's paying your salary, what they're doing regarding the furlough, or if they're making you redundant, so you need to take it up with them. If I reported a loss last year, does that lower my average over the 3 years? Yes, it will lower your average over the 3 years, unfortunately. So yeah, you do your figures and see if that has any effect. So, oh, I've got some more chats. Well, I might work backwards, I think, this time. Well, no, I won't, because that will be really confusing. So where did I finish? Yeah, so I've got past barriers, great comment, thank you. Right, so yeah, now I'm back. So Alejandro, corporation tax payments can be postponed. I know VAT returns. Yes, we've postponed some corporation tax payments on behalf of clients. You must call HMRC if you can get through. The last I heard was a 2-hour wait. So if you can get through, that'd be great. But yes, definitely defer your corporation tax payment. Not sure if you know about this, if our employees are off sick because of self-isolating and we were paying them SSP, can we claim that back? So yes, the SSP, the amounts that you've been paying your employees, you can claim back through the PAYE system. There's no limit. The only limit is if you employ more than 250 employees, which I doubt anyone here does. So you can get that back. Obviously, make sure that when you run the payroll that you have marked them as SSP on sick pay, so the software can then work out and make sure then it's rebated back to you through the PAYE system. Will the grant be clawed back via higher taxes at some point? Well, that was very interesting, wasn't it? If you were listening to his speech, that he said that he wants everyone to now pay their fair amount of tax going forward. What he meant by that, I don't know, but it'll be very interesting how this will get repaid. Thanks to you, Lydia. I'm going to now expand my desktop so no one can see the rest of it. Can you claim the 80% if you're drawing a pension? No, I've covered that already. I've been self-employed for over 3 years. I also have a limited company which is not trading, will be covered. Yes, so if you're self-employed over the last 3 years and that's what your tax return shows, then you will be getting the rebate. Yes, 100%, as long as HMRC are aware of your self-employment income. What if you furlough, but then your claim is rejected, so you get stuck with staff costs you would otherwise have avoided if you made redundancy or reduced hours? There shouldn't be really any reason why your claim will be rejected. If you've furloughed your staff and they are not working, I can't see any reason why the claim will be rejected. I think the major issue is how long you've got to finance the payments. Will it be, they've said the end of April, the rebates will come through. What happens if it's the end of May? What happens if it's the end of June? So it's 2 or 3 months to then fund these payments. I have heard that Wetherspoons have announced today that they're not paying anybody their furlough payments until they get their rebates from HMRC, which seems pretty unfair. However, that's their decision. So I wonder how many other companies are going to then follow that same route. Don't know. Mixed property portfolios, commercial, residential. No, if your majority of your income is made up of rental income, then you will not get the grant. It's got to be self-employed income. It has to be more than 50% of all your other income, unfortunately. If you're self-employed and still working, profits of just under 50 grand, can you claim the grant up to 2.5 grand, even though you are still working? 100%, no problem with that at all. Yes, temps on our own payroll paid through PAYE being entitled to furlough status. Yes, because they're PAYE. As long as then, yeah, the job is, you're not making them redundant, 100% you can get the furlough, they can get furlough status. Another one, limited company, one-man band, working from home. Can you furlough yourself? Again, I've covered this. Yes, you can, but you need to be so careful that you're not working. Which, if it's a one-man company, if you're contracting, then it's going to be very difficult to do any work, to be honest. So furloughing yourself as a one-man limited company is fine, unless we hear anything else to the contrary. If we claim universal credit till the grant comes in, do we have to pay back the universal credit money? That's a great question. I really don't know. I'm not sure. I think the grant, because it's taxable, wouldn't have any effect on your universal credit money, but I don't know. I don't think even the universal credit guys would know that yet, because literally announced yesterday. So I think when you go through the universal credit application, it might be worth pointing out. They might have updated the application to now ask that question. Husband and wife team. Husband is director, wife and employee, both on payroll. Can wife claim furlough? What can husband claim? So the husband and wife team, husband is director, wife and employee, both on payroll. So yeah, the wife can be furloughed if she's not working. Obviously gets 80% of her salary as a rebate. Husband, again, can be furloughed, again, only if he's not working. And you can prove that you're not working. Recently closed my limited company, now operate as a sole trader. I have not yet completed self-assessment as I've only been operating as a sole trader for less than a year. So that does mean I can't claim, correct. Unfortunately, you can't claim any of this rebate if you have recently started as self-employment. When and who's going to announce the news on company directors? I don't know. It was just something I read and picked up today. So if it's not today, hopefully it'll be on Monday, but we shall wait and see. How much will the government profit from the the business loans? I'd imagine a lot of money, but I won't go that route. Do your tax POA earnings count towards your net profit? No, they don't. So you've got to ignore your POA earnings. It's just then looking at your self-employed income for your net profit. David Hogg, my wife is joint partner on my account and both pay tax on account. She also works full-time. Can we both claim? My wife is a joint partner on my accounts and both pay tax on account. She also works full-time. So again, working full-time, I'd imagine her full-time income is going to be more than her self-employment income, so she won't be able to claim under the self-employment, but she will under the furlough. But you can claim if that's your only source of income is from your self-employed income, you can claim it, obviously based on the criteria. Are you entitled to furlough if you're under an umbrella company or an agency? No. Furlough, yes. So you can be furloughed, but it is down to the umbrella company or the agency to determine whether they want to furlough you, and they are confident that the work is going to be there when this is all over and done with. Or with some agencies I've seen that basically they're making them redundant because they don't know when the job's going to come back online, and also they are unable to fund the furlough payment. A bit like Witherspoons, they're unable to fund the furlough payment for a month or 2 months until the rebate comes in. So they're going down the redundancy route and dealing with it from that way. So one of our employees is a physiotherapist. He has not much work to do because of the COVID, but we are still paying him full salary. Can he claim that back through PAYE? No, because he's still working. If he's still working, or he's on reduced hours, he can't claim it back. The only time you can furlough is if work is stopping completely, then you can get the 80% back through of the salary. So even reduced hours, can't furlough. It's got to be all or nothing. A few more questions. What's the time? I've got another 5 or 10 minutes. My business partner and I were both self-employed and went on to PAYE in March. So I'm not eligible for the 80% salary through PAYE. I'm now concerned that we won't be able to claim as a self-employed as we have unregistered. Should we re-register self-employed, or will an exemption be made? My business partner and I were both self-employed and went on PAYE in March, so I'm not eligible for the 80%. I'm now concerned that we won't be able to claim. No, so you're fine. If you're, so what you're going to have to do, I think you're going to have to re-register as self-employed and start working again. Yeah, I think you're going to have to start working, and if you have to prove to HMRC that you're working again as self-employed to enable you to claim your 3 years, the 80% of the 3 years whilst you were self-employed. So I will definitely consider re-registering as self-employed with HMRC. Will you be able to claim 80% if on my last tax return did not earn enough to pay tax? It's a great question. So I think you will. So even though your income was below the personal allowance limit, so you paid no tax, your profit, and it did say taxable profit, if your taxable profit over the average was £10,000–12,000, you will still get the 80% rebate because it's taxable profit before your personal allowance. So again, I think the detail will come when you apply for the grant, hopefully in the next few months. Can one get the grant if they'll claim maternity payments from HMRC? I doubt it very much. I don't think you'll be able to get both. But again, I'm not really sure on maternity payments. It might be worth contacting HMRC to find out, but I don't know, because if you think about it, maternity, you're getting it now. So if you were self-employed for 3 years, and you were showing profits for those 3 years, and you submitted your form, you would still get it. So yeah, if you're claiming maternity now, it's in the current tax year, I think you will still get it, because your self-employed tax return will have 3 years self-employed income, and you're still entitled to it. So maternity on self-employed, I think you'll be okay. Let me just check if there's any further questions coming through. There's a few, but not many. Let me just maybe just fire these ones out quickly, and then we're all done. Don't forget, as mentioned, I'm going to be holding another one Monday at 3 o'clock, go into a little bit more detail on the furlough, looking at the detailed guidance that was announced yesterday. We've got some examples also that will be showing what the effect is if you pay 100% of the salary, paying the 80% of the salary, or even cutting it back even further if for the higher employees, where you want to cap it at the £2,500. So look out for that webinar on Monday, trying to give you a lot more information on how the furlough works, and even give you some examples of the letters. Now that the HR guys and the employment solicitors are now sort of got their teeth into it, there's advising what should be included in those letters. So look out for that webinar on Monday at 3 o'clock. So sorry, let me just see where I got up to on this. Where do I stand regarding my shop rent as I've had to close? Not really sure what that means. Whether not really sure what that means. Where do I stand regarding my shop rent as I've had to close? If you're self-employed, then obviously you can claim the rebate as explained. Will the software we use for payroll action the furlough payments and notify HMRC? No, 100% not. That's why no one, the PAYE scheme cannot cope with this. So they're building new software to enable the furlough payments to be paid, which is why there's the delay. So we've just got to wait until that's up and running. As a freelance sole trader, I must not even look for work or do any work if I want to claim for this rebate. No. So freelance sole trader, you can carry on working. You can carry on working, you can still look for work. This is different to a furlough employee. So you can carry on working 100%, and that was made very clear. They want the self-employed to continue to work where they can. If you work under POA for 2 companies, can you be furloughed for both employers and receive 2 payments up to £2,500? No. I think that sort of gets beyond what the spirit of it. I'm sure it's going to be £2,500 per individual rather than 2 employees. However, looking at the detail, I'll look at the detail regarding that and cover that on the webinar on Monday. If an agency pay worker is furloughed, who should cover the on costs associated with the temp, for example, employers, NI, pension? Right, so again, there was a huge amounts of confusion when this was announced, but the clarity yesterday has made it quite clear that you'll get the £2,500 rebate plus the employer's NI plus the pension. So that they've made that quite clear. You will get back the NI and pension. If someone has just ended their 9 months maternity leave and is coming back to work on the 1st of April, can they claim furlough? I'm assuming they're under POAE rather than well, there must be POAE rather than self-employed. No, so they can't because they weren't on the payroll. So regarding the furlough, if you're an employee, you have to be employed at the 28th of Feb, which she mostly would be then if she was on maternity leave. Right, so I'd imagine she was mostly okay because she was on the payroll. It depends if she was on the payroll on the 28th of Feb. I think if she was, then you can furlough her. If she was not on the payroll at the end of Feb, then no, you can't. I hope that's helped. It all depends if they were on the payroll. Q&A. One last check on the chat to see if there's any more. No, there's no more. So hopefully that's been quite helpful. As the weeks roll on, hopefully we'll get there and start seeing some signs of recovery. At the moment, it's hard to sort of keep positive, but we all need to stick in there and just get through this, look at your personal finances and just try and get through the next couple of weeks. Hopefully, if we can get through April, I think things will sort of quieten down and everyone will get to know how things are panning out. But if you have any questions that I haven't answered, by all means, drop myself or Ashley an email. We'll try and get around to answering them over the next few days. As you can imagine, we're being quite busy dealing with stuff and helping as many people as possible. Please look out for our emails. We've got huge amounts of content in those emails. I know sometimes it can be information overload, but there is good stuff in there. If not, then just join up to these webinars Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the time being, just to keep you guys up to speed. If you've got any suggestions how we can improve the webinars, let me know, which would be good. Then we can try and get as much information to you guys. Thanks for listening and goodbye. Thank you.